Coach Kelley Hilliker of the swimming and diving team, Coach Caressa Derossett of the softball team, and Coach Gabby Holko of the women's basketball team. This week is the Women in Sports Week. To start off, is there anyone in sports, any women in sports that you looked up to when you were younger? And is there anyone that your players look up to now?
I would say for me, I knew I wanted to be in coaching at a really young age, being with basketball as early as third grade when I started. Pat Summitt was the person that I looked up to in terms of women in coaching. Back then, obviously, women were not leading programs as much as they are now, especially in terms of women's basketball. So it was somebody that I was able to see, and women's basketball games were not broadcasted the way that they are now. Pat Summitt is, I think, just was ahead of the game. She was somebody that was a strong female character. She had that look that everyone knows it as the Pat Summitt eyes. Like, she would just shoot you a look, and she was able to command a room, command a court. I think men and women alike both looked up to her. So that was the coach in my young career that I looked up to. But I was also fortunate enough that every basketball coach that I had from third grade all the way through college was a female. And that does not happen often. So I started basketball in third grade, and I had the same coach from third through eighth grade. It was a Catholic school, so our sports were all kind of combined together. And then when I went to high school, I had a legendary women's basketball coach in Pittsburgh. And then when I went to college, I also had a female women's basketball coach. So I was super fortunate to have a lot of strong women to look up to. And that was something that was really cool for me to be able to say, okay, this is what I want to do. In terms of who our girls on our roster probably look up to now in the media, I think we have a ton. I mean, Caitlin Clark is one of them. I think we have Asia Wilson, who's another one. You have Sue Bird, Megan Rapinoe. I mean, I think there's a ton of really strong, empowering women throughout a lot of sports that I think our girls would probably look up to and be able to say, okay, like, that's who I want to kind of empower and be.
Yeah, I had kind of almost the opposite experience of, like, in swimming, a lot of the coaches when you're younger are women, and then as you get older, it's all men, pretty much. So I think since 12, I was coached by men. When I started coaching, like, all the head coaches were men. Most people around me were men. And so, like, I had some great female coaches when I was younger, but I knew I wanted to coach, but I always viewed it as a side gig because there were no women who were head coaches. There were no women who were coaching the high schoolers. Like, it really wasn't until college that I experienced, like, a true having a female as my main coach. So, like, the people I looked up to when I was younger were more the athletes. It was, Katie Ledecky, Natalie Coughlin, Elizabeth Beisel, like, the people who were making waves in the sport because there just weren't really women coaches to look up to. I think now it's changing. Like, you see more, less at the club, but definitely more in college, where there are more women coaching swimming in college, that there are more opportunities for people to look up to. I think in terms of athletes, Caitlin Clark is a big one. I think Simone Biles and her conversation on mental health has been huge. And then the rugby player, I'm blanking on her name. Iona. Like, I think she is a huge influence right now in all of her body positivity, and really being prominent in a sport that I think is traditionally associated with men, and you don't really watch, women's rugby. And so she's just a powerhouse there, like, and she just promotes body positivity, which is huge, I think, for women's sports right now.
Yeah, I'm, like, in between both. Like, for me, I was always coached by men. I started off being coached by my mom and my father, and then as I got more competitive, it was male coaches that coached me up. And then through college, I had a different coach all 4 years, but 3 of the 4 were women. And I kind of had the opposite, where it was like, for me, I didn't have a strong role model. I had my sophomore year coach was just a legend, and she was great, and I got her in her last year before she retired, so that was awesome. But it was like a little taste of it, but I never really I had the strong mentors from male coaches, but those male coaches empowered me as a female. And one being my first coaching, my GA-ship with Alfred University, Luke Wisniewski, absolutely amazing mentor, and like promoted me. He's like, you know, you're great at this. Like the girls are going to connect with you. You're always going to have one up than a man has because you played the sport, you have the experience, and you are a female and you can connect with them and you understand what they're going through. So he was amazing at building me up on that side of it. As far as athletes, I mean, I think the great thing about female sports is we admire all sports and all females. Like you guys were saying, like crossing sports. Like my kids name drop everybody from all different teams and all different sports, and they just look up to them all, like kind of like this bank of the great people like they look up to and really tap into. And I think that's really special about female athletes, and what I've noticed is that they want the resources. They're going to go and look, and they're going to go find different outlets or different ways and connect with different athletes. So I think right now, like, I mean, females are killing it, and if anything, they're breaking barriers, and it's not even like, it's kind of like they're not like, that's not what they're going for. They're just going to be the best them, and that's just being a great role model for everybody else below them. And so it's honestly a really good atmosphere right now, and we're just going to keep pushing the envelope, and it's exciting to see, and it's really cool how we can cross sports, and it doesn't matter, you know, if we're on a court, we're in a pool, or we're on a field, we just get that mentality of being a student athlete or being an athlete and what it takes.
Yeah. Being coached by men and women, but for swim, you're coaching men and women. How is that having both genders on your team?
Honestly, because swimming is kind of two-gendered the whole way up, like all your clubs, your high schools, at least where I was from, like they're all mixed. There's not really separation of girls and boys or women and men. Like you go to the same meets, all of that is the same. So like in terms of coaching, I don't think it's crazy difficult managing both teams. Specifically from a gender perspective, I think the biggest thing is managing two teams that, even though they are seen as one, are still two teams. In terms of coaching, I think that's the biggest challenge, and I feel like it's a lonely challenge because there's not a lot of, you know, even now there's still not a lot of women coaches who are coaching both genders. You know, even, you know, in swimming and diving, in track and field, like we're still the minority. And so I think that is the hardest thing of managing two teams with two different personalities. I've been very fortunate that in terms of coaching the athletes, I've never experienced anything crazy. Like I've never had anyone I felt like speak down to me because I'm a woman, or question my judgment because I'm a woman. For me, it's been more from parents. It's been people more outside the sport. It's been more in the college setting, like recruits and recruit parents who, you know, I've heard someone say like, oh, my son wouldn't do well being reprimanded by a woman, or being yelled at by a woman, not being yelled at by a coach, but being yelled at specifically by a woman. And so that is kind of where the challenge is, and I have a hard time faulting people for that. It's wrong, but like I didn't see women coaches, so I know when I was looking at schools, like I wanted a male coach because that's what I had and that's what I was used to. You know, and I went to college, had all female coaches, and it was great, and I had a great experience, and obviously my mind has changed. I think the challenges are there is getting parents and swimmers at the club level to kind of understand that women coaches still have can have the same abilities, like can have the same knowledge bases. You know, and I don't really see it from parents as much at the college level, but when I coached club, like I had one meet where at 23 years old coaching a 13 and over session that I was ignored by parents, by other coaches, by officials, because it was like I was viewed as a parent. At 23, it was easier to see me as a parent of a 15-year-old than to see me as a coach who's supposed to be on deck. And so I think it's more the people who are outside of the direct coaching is really where the challenges are.
Okay. And there's lots of societal pressures on women and everything, and you just spoke about those outside of the sport, but have either of you experienced as a coach some of those aspects, I guess?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm in a sport like it used to be. I mean, there's a lot of male coaches still coach softball, and it's definitely turned more to female. But you still have you don't have many female officials. Our umpires are mostly male, and I've gotten the sweethearts, the kid, just those little sly comments, and it's exactly that. It's like the outside perspective. I've gotten the she's a female, like, I've gotten those things, but it's never directly in, like, it's not like my players, it's not, the department or anything like that. It's just kind of like those people that come along with those things. And it's frustrating, 100% frustrating. But I think the biggest thing is, like, how I look at it is, okay, like, call me sweetheart. Let's see if your mind changes at the end of this game. Or let's see, my hope is that they kind of look at it and be like, okay, like she's not this little girl, or she's not just a girl, she's a great coach, or her team is good. So the biggest thing is, like, I've always pushed is, shrug it off, hold yourself to a high standard, and let your true self or your true coach and your players speak for itself. And I think it's definitely getting better. Like, I haven't faced it as much. I mean, I still get I get more of the kid, or like, oh, you look like one of your players all the time. Like, we have umpires that come to the dugout, and like, where's the head coach? And I'm like, it's me. And they're like, oh, I thought you were a player, or oh, I thought you were a student, or whatever it is. And so that's frustrating too, but it's kind of like, I mean, whatever. Like, you got to brush it off. You got to move on, because you got to go out and coach. And also too, just being a role model for players, and saying, like, you're going to be judged based off your appearance, and it's how you handle it and how you roll off of it, and how you let that handle you, or how you let that directly affect you. So my biggest thing is let them have their first opinion, and then I'll show through my actions and through what we do that we're not just a kid, or we're not just a girl. Like, we're here, we mean business, we want to compete, we want to do well. And it's just, one of those obstacles that is getting better, but it's going to take time. That's the biggest thing. And also just giving the respect when it's not given. Just continuing that and hoping, karma is going to work that way, and also that it's going to be like a revolving door of, like, okay, this is not the best way I handled it, and I'm appreciative she handled it this way, so I could be better the next time. So it's just kind of like those little bumps you got to get through, and got to take your mind off it and say, what is the focus right now? Is it this coach, undermining me and making me upset as umpire, or is it that we got to go win a game today, and I got to get the team together, the team's got to stay together as a united front? But yeah, definitely have those still, and it's getting better, but it comes with the territory.
Yeah, I would say in women's basketball, our biggest thing is dealing with referees. And we have 3 refs on each game. We do have, I would say more so this year, more female officials than we have in the past. But I would honestly say that they are more critiquing of us as women coaches than the males. And I think that that's sometimes a little bit hard, where we, as being strong, pretty extroverted women on the sideline and trying to have conversations with officials, and trying to, one, have the back of our team, right? Like, if we do disagree with a call, I think that there are ways to go about it. And I think as I've gotten older, I've learned that. My first year as a head coach, I mean, this is my 7th or 8th year as a head coach. My first year, I was nuts. And I was just, like, always feeling like I had to yell or do something, where this year, being in my 7th or 8th year, I think a big thing for me is being able to have a conversation with an official, but you would be pretty surprised at sometimes them not even wanting to have a conversation about calls, being that I'm a female on the sideline. And that's something that's really hard to deal with. And I think the biggest thing, as Caressa just said, is being able to rise above that. And even if it's a really, really bad call, and our girls know it, I know it, my assistants know it, being able to say, okay, let's rise above this, because sometimes it is going to be 6 against 5, or 7 against 5, or 8 against 5. But really what matters is the work that we put in practice every single day, and letting the game speak for itself. I think one for us, though, that's really big in the basketball world is when you do disagree with a call. I've had a male counterpart across the sideline from me be able to walk out to half court and an official just slowly walks them back to their coaching box, where if I take 2 steps onto the floor, it's, coach, you need to get back or you're going to get a technical, or I have had gotten a technical because of it. So I think that being able to know that there is still that societal norm that women need to be a little bit milder, where men can be boisterous and can say things. And I've gotten the same thing that Caressa has, where it's like all right, ma'am, please get back to your box, or all right, kid. I've gotten that a couple times, which is, it's so hard to deal with, but sometimes now, like I said, as I have gotten older, I smile at it, and I think that kind of gives them a different impression as well. Like, okay, she's not going to fight me on this. She's just going to smile, sit back, and see where that's at. I have 2 male assistants, so another thing for it is just being able to see, like, sometimes the refs will go towards them to have a conversation instead of coming to me. And I have learned now, like, I just let it happen, where it's like, okay, if my assistant Aaron or my assistant Mike can handle it, right, let them go. They can say anything under the sun and they're going to just be told, okay, I hear you. Where if I say that same thing, it's going to go in a different direction. But I think being able to empower our women through those tough times, because that's life, right? Like, everything in life isn't going to go our way, and you're going to have a ton of challenges. But being able to, again, rise above that and show, okay, I can still be strong in what my standards are. I just have to be able to form it in a different way.
Okay. The last couple years, especially with basketball, the Caitlin Clark and the WNBA seeing more viewership, so the equality gap is kind of bridging a little bit, but can you think of any way that could close a little more? How have you seen it evolve in your lifetime, the women and men's sports gap?
I mean, I know for softball, it's been growing views too. Like, the World Series has been getting a lot bigger. They've actually had to, like, add more seats to the stadium and everything, which is super exciting to see. But I think, if anything, it's recognizing all levels, because that's the Division I level, where the Division III World Series is just as competitive and exciting as the Division I. So I think it's just, like, recognizing all, like, recognizing just women and at any level, at any institution, kind of doing, like, being a student athlete, because it's not easy, especially I feel like at this level where, you know, there is no scholarships. These kids are doing it for the love of the sport, and they're very serious about their education. And I mean, none of my kids have an easy major. They're out there doing some crazy things, and they're super, super smart and pushing the envelope that way too. And then coming in to practice and pushing the envelope that way, like, that's extraordinary. I think it's definitely something that, as coaches, as administration, as students, as anybody, just recognizing, like, you know, these athletes are not just coming out here and putting a show out for on the field or on the court, in the pool. That's how they are. That's how they always are. So I think it's that, just recognizing in sports, just recognizing the extraordinary people they are, and young people. This is a very hard time. The 18 to 22-year-olds, like, they go through a lot, and they're finding themselves, and they're becoming adults, and they're trying to do all these things on top of pushing it everywhere they're going. So I think another way just to bridge it is just to keep highlighting it, like, not just show great, you know, game clips from D1 and maybe some D2, like, just throw everything, like, highlight all these things. We're all on the same playing field. We're just doing it differently, and have different focuses, and of course more money other places. But other than that, we're all doing the same thing. We're all have the same goal in mind. So I think it's just, like, over highlighting everything. And that's and for the male side too, I think that's important too. But I think as coaches, like, we have the power. Like, I mean, we know social media could also be powerful in a wrong way, but powerful in a good way, where if we share, like, just even sharing and getting it out to other eyes, I think it's just, we're aware as an athletic department and as an athletic community of how crazy and great these things are that are happening. But it's like, we got to get it in front of the eyes of people who don't, because all they see is what's on ESPN, or what's highlighted in, you know, different reels. But, like, if we can do a better job as an athletic community of sharing to get in front of other people that are not in this community, I think that would be really helpful, of just highlighting, like, there's great things happening everywhere. And it will really, especially for female sports, probably get more looks. Like, that's what's happening with the World Series, is that records are being broken, games are getting crazier and more competitive, so more people viewed it, more people want to get there, more people want to see what's going on and learn about the sport of softball. So I think that could be all around. It's just, we got to share, we got to promote, It's not just our job just to coach our teams, but just to promote athletics, period, especially at this level, and put it in front of other people so they can see it.
Yeah, I think getting it out there is the biggest thing. Like allowing bigger audiences to see it, more different audiences to see it, allowing, younger girls to be able to watch themselves play basketball, play softball, see other women doing it, see it on TV, because that's going to keep them in the sport. That's going to keep them reaching, knowing that there's more levels so that they know there's an avenue to continue the sport. Seeing women in the coaching positions, like just getting it out there to more audiences, I think is huge and is definitely probably the main step. I think also moving into a language where it's not just, oh, that was a great WNBA game. Oh, that was a great women's basketball game. Oh, that was a great, women's 100 fly. Like moving into like, that's just a great athlete. That's just a great game. Turning it into that was a good women's game. Like it makes it a women's game. It's alien. It says it's not the norm. It's not natural. Like men's is the default and women's is the additive, and moving into a language where we can recognize like that this is just great. Like it's just great athletes playing a great game or swimming a great meet. Like it's moving into a language where we can recognize just incredible people in sports.
I think just the biggest of the viewership. Obviously, like when we grew up, we didn't see a ton of women's sports on TV because they always said that, oh, they will not get the viewership for it. But where I think women's basketball has grown with that, and I would even say the World Series, because they're now broadcasting every game, right? Even when you see the Olympic stuff, a lot of the women's sport, the women's events are more televised than the men's. And I think that that's something when you put it in front of people, they're going to see that they're great athletes. And as Kelly just said, like, I think that's the biggest terminology is like they're all wonderful athletes. It's not just because they're a woman or just because they're a man. I think, again, on the basketball side of things, like our Final Four has just grown. We, as a women's basketball coaching association, we get kind of a discount for Final Four tickets when we go because it's with our convention. And the cost of those have gone up drastically. And I think for some people it's like, oh, this stinks, but for us as coaches, we see it and we're like, this is wonderful, right? Like this is how we continue to grow the game. And as Kelly said about the being with the younger girls, like when we grew up, especially, there were only men's jerseys that you could buy, right? Now you see young girls walking around, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, right? Like Asia Wilson, Sue Bird, like all these people that you can now just go buy their jersey and rock it. And I think that that's something really cool. Again, on the basketball side of things is they're now starting different leagues. Like there's the Unrivaled League now. So that's a 3v3 full court league that's now promoted on TNT. It's televised. And I think just the viewership with everything is just going to be what takes it a step above if we continue that.
Okay. And to wrap up today, where do you see women's sports in 10 years? And where do you hope to see women's sports in 10 years?
I think a big thing for me is I'm super excited to see what flag football does. I think that that's an area where I think you're seeing a lot of high schools. I know PIAA just made it a high school sport. And I think out west it definitely had been more
Popular?
Yeah, more popular out west, and now towards the East Coast it's coming. And I think colleges are now starting to add it. But I'm excited to just see women stay in sports, right? And I think that that was a decline that we've had for a couple years where it's like, okay, you're seeing at the high school level, especially your smaller schools, where they're not even having enough females to field teams. So I think I'm hoping in 10 years with the viewership, the broadcasting, you're going to see these young girls grow up in it now. And I say all the time, like I say to our recruits, is play as many sports as you possibly can until you need to decide what sport you're going to play. I think we're fortunate at the Division III level that kids can be dual sport athletes. And I think that that's wonderful. We've had a couple. I know our season's the longest. It's about 7 months long. Caressa and I were just talking about that. Like we go fall, winter, and almost spring. So it's a little difficult, but we've had dual sport athletes where they go fall into winter, or they'll go right from our sport into softball. So I would just hope that young girls see all these sports, they try them, right? Push them out of their comfort zone to go try them, and parents allow them to be who they want to be and play multiple sports throughout their lifetime.
Yeah, I definitely, in 10 years, I mean, can't even imagine. Like there's not even like I think what I could say in 10 years from now, I hope is happening. I could see it happening in 2 years from now. It's really just if we just keep this push and keep inviting and welcoming and making sports approachable. I think also too what females being in sports does for them. Like it's getting them into majors that are not a typical female major, and now they're getting into a career field that's not a typical female career field. Like that, I think that's the biggest thing. It's not just in athletics; it's breaking boundaries everywhere. And I mean, I'm excited for it. I mean, flag football. There's also now women's wrestling. I mean, I don't know much about wrestling, but I teach lessons at a facility that does wrestling, and you see these female athletes in there for wrestling, and like. I mean, that's just so cool. Like and I just hope it keeps opening up like that. And we just keep recognizing it and keep moving forward. And like I said, the biggest front is just breaking down that barrier, getting away from that like subtextual female or woman, like just athlete or professional. Like just take away the gender out of it and just keep it to that. Like that's honestly what I hope for in 10 years, that we only classify it just to like, say, well, this is this game and this game, so you don't get the games mixed up. But it's not used as like, this category of like, oh, go this way. But I hope it keeps, pushing women to empower themselves and know that there's nothing they can't do, especially in the time and age we're in, and everybody's equal, and opportunities out there. You just got to go get it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both. I don't feel like there's a lot else I can add. No, but definitely I want to see more women stay in sports longer. Like see that it's something that doesn't diminish them but empowers them. See it as something where they can find the sport or sports that they love to do and can continue to do and do continue to do. I think going back to what you said about highlighting all levels of the sport, like seeing that if you love something, it's not D1 or bust. It's not professional or bust, that you can continue to enjoy it at the D3 level, at the D2 level, post-college with, clubs or for us master swimming, things like that, and just see more women stay in sports and continue with it and continue to feel empowered.
Thank you for joining me today, coaches. I'm Brai Tate, and today I was joined by Coach Hilliker, Coach Dero, and Coach Holko. Thank you for watching another episode of Coach's Corner.